you can't show up on time, you can't practice, you can't want to go out there and win, you shouldn't be here. Because this is a privilege. It's the greatest job in the world. You get to go out and play a game. And if you can't care enough, even in week 17, even when you're trash, when you're 4-11, if you can't care enough to go out there and give everything you've got and try your hardest, that's bullshit.
Impressive speech from J.J. Watt after one of the many Houston Texans losses in 2020. As expected, his final season with the Houston Texans. News that broke Friday morning, Peter, just after we wrapped up, not long after that. First, it was the Pouncey twins retiring, and then they got to enjoy the spotlight for, 45 minutes. J.J. Watt announces that he is out in Sims off this week. I tried to explain to him last week, all we do is sit and talk about football. It's not like you need some time off, but he apparently needed a break from me. So, Peter, you have to deal with me today. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Mike. You know, when I saw the Watt news last week, I wrote in my column, this would have been now 8 days ago, I wrote in my column that, just listening to some chatter at the Super Bowl, reading the tea leaves, I thought that J.J. Watt was going to try to talk his way out of Houston. And, it turns out that as I wrote that, it was already happening. And on Friday, I really think what happened here, Mike, and as I wrote my column today, I think it's probably pretty likely that Nick Caserio, the general manager of the Texans, said, whoa, wait a minute. We could probably get something for this guy. Even if he wants to pick out a few teams that he'd agree to get traded to, let's look around. Now, that's just my educated guess. I don't have that in stone, but Nick Caserio's not married to J.J. Watt. And, but I do think that in the end, intelligence prevailed. J.J. Watt has been fantastic for this franchise as a player and off the field. And I just don't think that they should have held him hostage for the sake of getting a 4th or 5th round draft choice, maybe a 3rd.
Well, fantastic as a player, a loyal contributor to the team for a decade, and also inching toward, as you surmised, a potentially ugly effort to get what he wanted. We saw some tweets recently. We saw some support that he expressed for the equipment manager who was unceremoniously dumped, the latest in a growing line of Texans employees who are now former Texans employees. And I would suspect that he made it clear, or maybe didn't have to make it clear, that if he didn't get what he wanted, he wasn't going to be as quiet and discreet as Deshaun Watson has been. We'll talk about those two situations coming up. Before we get to that, though, hear it straight from the man himself. In the event that you didn't see it on Friday, here's J.J. Watt taking to social media to let the world know that his time in Houston has come to an end.
I have sat down with the McNair family, and I have asked them for my release, and we have mutually agreed to part ways at this time. I came here 10 years ago as a kid from Wisconsin who'd never really been to Texas before. And now I can't imagine my life without Texas in it. The way that you guys have treated me, besides draft night, I mean, you guys booed me on draft night, but every day after that, you treated me like family. And I truly feel like you're my family. Since that day, I have tried to do everything in my power to work and earn your respect and try and make you proud on and off the field. I'm excited and looking forward to a new opportunity, and I've been working extremely hard. But at the same time, it is always tough to move on. And I just want you guys to know that I love you. I appreciate you. I appreciate the McNair family for giving me, drafting me and giving me my first opportunity in the NFL. Thank you, Houston. I love you.
And that was it. And he said at one point, too, on Friday, Peter, there would be no press conference, which seemed a little bit unusual to me. 10 years, easy to set it up on Zoom. Get J.J. Watt, get Cal McNair, get Nick Caserio, get David Culley, maybe even a little 15-minute warm-up routine from Jack Easterby, some of his comedic stylings to get things going. And none of that. no press conference. And it just makes me wonder what's the current mood between Watt and the organization. Everything's changed as far as he's concerned. And my guess would be, and this is throw a dart, close your eyes, and see if it hits the board, I don't think he wanted one.
I think you're absolutely right, Mike. When has J.J. Watt shied away from the media? He's been one of those public guys in the NFL over the last decade. Mike, look, you are the king. I am a distant 42nd to you when it comes to looking at a video like that from J.J. Watt and reading the underlying meaning of his words. And you know what my underlying meaning was listening to those words? There's not a lot of love lost right now between me and the Texans. There was no warm and fuzzy, I owe everything to this organization. I talked to the McNairs, and we have decided to part ways. No, I'd really like to thank them. Whatever. It's like thanking the people of Houston. I think J.J. Watt is a very smart guy. He doesn't do anything unintentionally. Why does he not want to have a press conference? Why does he not want to talk to a bunch of the locals? And I'm sure he may eventually. I just thought the whole thing was odd, as you say.
And I suspect at this point in the Texans' existence, they don't relish any additional opportunities to be grilled about Deshaun Watson, because that was inevitable. That would have come up, and that would have overshadowed potentially the J.J. Watt exit press conference. Not that that was the prime factor, but I think for both sides, if this is going to be about Deshaun Watson and not J.J. Watt, what's the point of doing it? But let's keep it about J.J. Watt, Peter, because you said something that intrigued me. I read it early this morning in your latest Football Morning in America column, which is available for anyone who would like to see it at profootballtalk.com. We ask that you at least wait until after the show, though. We've got some business to do here. You can read it later or during a break, although there's a lot there, so it may take a couple of commercial breaks for you to get through all of it. Bless you. J.J. Watt and his contract. 1 year left, $17.5 million. And as you said, Nick Caserio still new, brand new, not on the job a month, if a month, barely more than a month. This is an asset. And this is how general managers think of their teams. It dehumanizes the players. Don't get that wrong. But at the same time, these are chess pieces. And this is a piece that could have been, with cooperation, if they had finessed it, and it would have potentially required a better relationship than the one that currently exists between Watt and the Texans. He reduces his salary to a range that would be suitable to someone who would trade for it. You work it all out. You let him pick his destination. You get a 6th-round pick, a 5th-round pick. You get something. You get something for this asset that you have purchased through a contract that still has a year left on it. You get nothing by cutting him. You don't get a compensatory draft pick. That only happens when a player leaves via free agency. You get nothing in return when you cut a guy. And that's what surprised me, that there was no effort. And if there was an effort, they kept it very quiet. And I suspect that Caserio would have found a way to leak it to make it look like, he understands that you try to get something for every guy you have under contract, even the guys that you don't plan to keep anyway. But they didn't even go down that path. And my guess is, number one, the McNair family thought that they owed it to J.J. Watt to let him go if he wanted to go at this point in his career. Number two,
agreed.
Watt probably wasn't going to cooperate with that, because all he had to say is, no, I'm not doing it. No, I'm not reducing my salary. Either try to trade $17.5 million or cut me come March 17.
Mike, I think, first of all, the McNair family, Janice McNair, the widow of the late Bob McNair, who founded the franchise, and her son, Cal McNair, who is now running the team, in essence, I think they looked at the contributions that J.J. Watt had made to the city. Obviously, the $41.6 million raised in Hurricane Harvey relief, it touched every part of the city in Harris County. It was an amazing job by Watt in kind of summoning the best in people around the world. I think that's number one. And number two, this is a guy who's been the best player in the history of the franchise. He wanted out. And quite honestly, Mike, there are some times where you say, because look, as I wrote in my column, I talked to several people around the league and asked, what is J.J. Watt worth? Most of them said nothing at $17.5 million a year after missing 32 games in the last 5 years due to injury. And then last year playing the season and having 5 sacks. So, he's not going to bring much in return, if anything. But obviously he would have to fix his contract. And I think that some of the contract would have to be incentive-based. And for a guy like J.J. Watt, who's the 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, and he played 16 games last year, I think he really would have chafed at that. What's interesting now that the 17.5 basically doesn't exist anymore, it basically, you can make up whatever salary you want. I think this is going to be an incentive-laden contract, and J.J. Watt is going to tell Tom Condon, his agent, to essentially, here are the teams I want, try to make something happen. Money's not that big a deal to me. And oh, by the way, I'd really love to play for the Packers.
And I want to get to that in a minute because I have some thoughts about where he could land and some of the practical complications that may go along with it. When we think back to Friday, we saw the J.J. Watt video. We saw the statement that was issued by the Houston Texans. Cal McNair mobilized to speak to, as best I can tell, a very small handful of reporters. I noticed in your column today he spoke to you. He spoke to Shefty. He spoke to Ian Rappaport. I didn't get invited to participate. Gee, I can't say I'm stunned given some of the opinions that we've crafted over the past few months about McNair and more specifically his right-hand man, Jack Easterby. But what did you gather from the conversation with McNair? And isn't it odd that Caserio didn't have anything to say to anyone?
Mike, it was he was very nice. He said all the right things about J.J. Watt. Was not going down the road about Deshaun Watson other than to say he is a Texan, and I expect that he will remain a Texan. What a great guy he's been for this franchise in this city. Basically, I read the stuff that he said to Ian and Adam on Friday, and I'm not saying he was reading it from a piece of paper, but it was the same stuff. And look, that's fine. It's absolutely fine. My only point about all of that is that I agree with you. I think that if J.J. Watt had not gotten his free release, had not gotten his freedom, I'm not saying it would have gotten ugly, but my opinion is that there's a chance, and a pretty good one, that Watt would have been outspoken in saying that what an organization this is in what is supposed to be, a family-driven NFL that, I helped raise $41 million in a time of dire need for this city. With me playing here, we've won 4 of the last 6 division championships. I won 3 Defensive Players of the Year. I'm the best player in the history of this franchise. And you're holding me hostage for a 5th or 6th round pick that might rise to a 4th, who knows? I don't even know what it would be. But I do know that from taking the temperature of people around the NFL, there was not going to be a lucrative market for J.J. Watt.
Yeah, well, and especially not at that salary. And if you're going to be negotiating a lower salary anyway, just do it as a free agent. And I think that the Texans, who have done many things in recent months that could not be characterized fairly and reasonably as smart, did the smart thing in not picking the fight with J.J. Watt. It can be postured as them doing the right thing. The right thing was to not make themselves look even worse by getting into a fight with J.J. Watt that they would, and more importantly, locally, at a time when the perception of that team in Houston is as low as it's ever been since they joined the NFL 19 years ago. Getting into a fight with J.J. Watt would have made it even worse. And you said something funny about Cal McNair. Not funny, not like funny like a clown, funny, intriguing. I had a flashback to the first time I ever heard Cal McNair speak. He did radio in Houston, the flagship down there, 610. And it was like he was reading off of a sheet of paper. When you said that about the comparison of the comments to you and to Shefty and to Ian, it when he was on radio, it sounded like he was reading straight from the talking points that someone else had given to him. So here's a glimpse of the talking points that made the rounds on Friday, said Cal McNair on J.J. Watt and on the biggest issue currently involving the team, Deshaun Watson. It's not the right time to talk about the front office. It's all about J.J. and honoring him. There is a lot of misinformation out there. I'll leave it at that. Well, you wouldn't want to take advantage of an opportunity to clear up misinformation, would you? Today we want to focus on JJ. We don't want to focus. We do want to focus. Today we want focus on JJ. Deshaun is our quarterback. He's a Texan, and we expect him to remain a Texan, and we'll leave it at that.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.